Hi, and welcome everyone to the second episode of the Ace Tennis Podcast. I am Avyukt, and this is the Doon School's first ever tennis podcast. As you can see, from this episode onwards, we're going to use the video format. And in this episode, we shall analyze the first week of this year's Wimbledon, the championships at Wimbledon, and I will be accompanied in doing so by the senior members of the Doon School's tennis team, Aradhya and Archit. So let's start by discussing the ladies singles tournament so far. Archit, what are your thoughts on the tournament so far?
Well, again, I think this week started off by a lot of early round exits. It's interesting to see how only three people from the top 10 managed to reach the third round, that being Ashley Barty, Ariana Sabalenka, and Iga Swiatek. And it was really upsetting to see Serena Williams ousted from the first round after an injury on the court. And I do believe the courts were pretty slippery that day because a lot of players took some dangerous falls. And we also had the unseeded Americans, Sloane Stephens, beat Petra Kvitova, the 10th seeded player. And that was a really interesting match for me. What do you think about this,
Yeah,
Radha?
in fact,
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Avyukt.
Yeah, I think it's always difficult to predict the women's singles winner at the start of Wimbledon. This has been the
Mm.
case for about 4 to 5 years now. And there's
Yeah.
always a shock at Wimbledon, and you see a lot of unseeded players and a lot of wildcard entries doing well. And I think that's the beauty of this slam, especially. And another talking point was Manic Monday this time. So, what are your views on Manic Monday, Avyukt?
yeah, of course, we know that this is going to be the last ever of the Middle Sunday and Manic Monday. So for our viewers who do not know what Middle Sunday is, it's an age-old tradition of Wimbledon, and it's been a fiercely protected tradition of Wimbledon, like there are many. So it's basically the Sunday between the 2 weeks of play. It's given enough for all the players to recollect, reset, and get ready, well rested for the second week, which is the business end of the tournament. However, next year onwards, this won't exist because of various reasons, revenue source being one, and yeah, there are many reasons to it. But yeah, I think this really, the Manic Monday really affects the women's side of draw because it means that for the ladies, they play all their round of 16 matches on Monday of the second week and the quarterfinals on the Tuesday, so they don't get that rest. Next year onwards, it's going to be, well, in my eyes, it's going to be a bit fairer because they should, just like the men, get the same amount of rest because, I mean,
Definitely.
in
And,
today's
and
day
you
and
know, it's
age.
also interesting how I think Aradhya mentioned that these early round exits give a lot of unseeded players the chance to win these slams. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
case for Iga Swiatek when she won the French Open. And then we again have some upcoming players like Coco Gauff. I mean, she's 17 years old and we see her making a very strong mark on the court. So I think that's
Yeah.
really great for all these upcoming players as well.
Yeah, but then don't you think like how the men's tennis over the last 2 decades has really benefited from having three or four staple figures who've really dominated the side, and maybe it's become a bit monotonous, but we really do enjoy. It's a fascinating battle. The women's side hasn't had such players since the very decline of the great Serena Williams.
I mean,
There's no outright winner. Every new slam you get a new winner. So Archit Radhe, what do you feel about this?
I do agree with you somewhat, but I also feel that players like Naomi Osaka, Ashley Barty, I think in the upcoming few years, they're definitely going to be the most dominant ones. I mean, we always see Naomi Osaka how she, maintains takes the match very strongly from the beginning. She maintains the momentum, and I think she has great tournaments whenever she's doing well in those early rounds. So I feel that in the upcoming years, and then as I mentioned earlier, players like Coco Gauff, I think these players can also be really dominant players in the coming years. What do you think about this, Radha?
Yeah.
I think the quality of tennis we've seen in the men's category has set a really high bar for the women's category. We've seen three magnificent players dominating the past 2 decades. So I think that's something that Avyuk mentioned has become monotonous, but I don't think I would love or expect to see women's there being such figures in the women's category, because I think that the unexpected is what makes Wimbledon and tennis great. Because I think in the women's category we can see an unseeded player winning, whereas in the men's category the last unseeded or the wildcard entry I remember winning was before I was born, which was Goran Ivanisevic.
Yeah,
I mean,
Radhe, you
it's
summed it up
interesting you say
beautifully.
like, yeah. I mean, it's very entertaining to see unseeded players win. I mean, that's why always the crowd is against Novak Djokovic when he's playing at Wimbledon. But again, I just feel that, the players that I mentioned earlier, they will become dominant. I mean, as Avyukt mentioned, Serena Williams, then we had Venus Williams as well. I mean, they're still playing, but they aren't as dominant. And I think it's the new players that are now coming into this new age of tennis, and they'll definitely take over the way these players had in their time.
Yeah, so I think you guys summed it up beautifully. The women's tennis is unique in its own right,
Yeah.
not the way men's tennis is, and it makes it even more fascinating.
And moving on to the gentlemen singles of this Wimbledon, there were a lot of early round exits, and there were a lot of shocks that came across in the first week. And to me, the first major shock was Tsitsipas losing in the first round. I mean, after almost winning French Open, to come and lose in the first round of Wimbledon is something that a lot of people, even I, didn't expect. But I think that's adapting to the new court. I think it's adapting from French Open to Wimbledon, which is one of the toughest changes to make in a span of 2 weeks. And I think which is why a lot of people withdrew as well. And I think Djokovic also took a lot of time to adapt to the surface. So Archit, what are your thoughts on this?
And what was even more shocking was that it was straight sets. And Francis Tiafoe was the person to beat Tsitsipas in the first round. Also, I do agree with you that, it's a tough surface to adapt to. And considering the fact that Tsitsipas didn't get to play a grass court tournament after French Open. So I think all these factors, the time to recover, because he played a lot of matches, a lot of long matches at French Open. So I wasn't really expecting him to go into the later rounds of
Yeah,
Wimbledon
but
this year.
Archit,
But first round is still a big upset.
I mean, you can say that, but I don't think it's good to sympathize with Tsitsipas here because 2 weeks is a lot of time. Yeah, he's a young lad. He should like Federer said after his match yesterday that these guys young and upcoming next gen players, they're young, they recover well. They don't need 2 days for recovery in a Grand Slam. So I mean, 2 weeks is a lot for him. Yeah, you can say that he took a lot of time to adjust, but then you look at Djokovic. He had a tricky first round against Jack Draper, who was like a typical serve and volley, big server, and British, of course. So he had the crowd in his side. So yeah, I mean, even Djokovic took one set to adjust, and after that he got onto a roll. So I mean,
But
dropping a set or two would have been
yeah, sorry. Go ahead, go ahead.
no. So I was saying that dropping a set or two would have been acceptable, but then for a top five player in the world to go out in straight sets in the first round of arguably the biggest tournament in the tour is a disgrace, and it just shows that we don't have an outright grass court specialist in the next gen coming up.
I think to rephrase what I was saying, more than physical recovery, I think a lot of it was about mental recovery for Tsitsipas. And he didn't get to play a grass court tournament. I think more or less every player in the draw at least played one grass court tournament. So I think that's a very big factor in sort of concluding about what really happened in that first round. Because he just wasn't, I don't think he was even playing 50% of his game. It was a pretty
Yeah,
flawed game from Tsitsipas that day.
no,
But I
that's
think
right.
the factor that comes into play at Wimbledon is it's the shortest tour. So we will in the past also we've had a lot of upsets of Wimbledon, and we have not seen those many upsets. I think combined at the US, Australian, and French Open, because I think at Wimbledon you can have big servers who can serve and volley and finish even the top players. So I think that's one thing that the first week of Wimbledon brings into play.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, but
And when
then
we talk about serve and volley, we've seen players like Federer, we've seen big servers like John Isner, Riley Opelka, and they've done good on grass. So I do agree with you there, Aradhya. Yeah, Avyukt, you were saying something.
Yeah, so I think in other news, I was really impressed by the Canadian duo of Felix Auger-Aliassime and Denis Shapovalov. Both of them have a rocket of a serve, and Shapovalov always donning that lefty bite serve from the advantage side. So he's always a threat, and of course, Auger-Aliassime was coming up from a the biggest victory possible on grass, defeating Federer in Halle, and I really didn't expect that. But yeah, and I was really disappointed by, of course, Tsitsipas was one, but then I was expecting a lot out of the Italian duo of Yannick Sinner and Musetti, and
Yeah.
Musetti especially because I thought his game would suit grass. He
Grass.
had a tricky serve and fine volleyer, excellent hand skills. So I really thought I was expecting more from him, but then both of them went out in the first round. Really disappointed.
And also, when you
Um,
talk about Dennis, I think he's got some fabulous ground strokes. They're very powerful, and We
Yeah.
talk about the slow speed on grass, and I think he's really shown that his ground strokes are something that players should fear. And when we talk about all these players, I think another commendable performance came by Taylor Fritz, because I think it's
Yeah.
only been three months since his knee surgery, and he played some wonderful matches. I think he beat Steve Johnson in a 5-set match in the second round, but he did eventually succumb to Alexander Zverev. But I think it's still really commendable what he did after simply 3 months of surgery. And I mean,
Hmm.
what do you think about this,
Yeah.
Aradhya? I think.
So
Yeah, I think obviously, I think Americans usually thrive on grass because they have a big serve, and we've seen Americans do well. We've seen Canadians do well this time, and I think this is because their aggressive game style, and I think that's very country and region oriented. Because it's the sort of game style you're brought up with. So I think that's why these Americans and Canadians do well. Another perform
Aradhya, you brought up a really interesting adjective with aggressive here, because we've really seen a lot of slips, more than usual in my eyes, in this year's edition of Wimbledon. And of course that's got to do with the longer grass they've got on in the center court and all courts this year, which, for the non-viewers, for the viewers who don't really watch Wimbledon, longer grass. So grass court, traditionally the ball's meant to skid on the court,
Yeah.
not bounce. But because of the additional grass this year, the longer grass, it's bouncing. And we saw Kyrgios shouting about that, yelling between the match that this is not real grass, but that's a different story. So when you speak about aggressive playing, the modern game, when we talk about it, we have got, there's a really lot of emphasis on movement, and we've really got aggressive movers. Now that may get you out of jail in hard courts and clay courts, but in grass courts, because of the grass being slippery and gathering moisture, it results in slipping, and it leads to quite a few injuries. And so if you look at it, I think Federer is the only player left in the entire tour, women's and men's combined, who's naturally grass court player, light mover, cautious mover, and really light on his feet.
And
And I think that's
just
evident by the
adding on to when you talk about Federer,
yeah,
he stated in his post-match conference that he doesn't feel any difference, because I think nearly
yeah,
everyone's been talking about how the grass has changed after the tournament not being held there last year. But Federer, I think after his second round match, did say that the conditions still feel the same. There's no difference. So I think I do agree with you that he's a very natural mover on grass. I mean, he's done so well on grass, so it's obvious. And I think for a lot of players who really play deep, who really play behind the baseline, they even face more difficulty because the grass there takes more time
yeah,
to adjust. And you talked about long grass, fresher grass. So I think that personally for me, even I feel that was a big difference this time. We had Serena Williams also, taking a big fall in the match. I
tumbling.
think led to her ankle injury, eventually withdrawing. So grass and the court surfaces, especially in the first week, is a big factor in the performance of a lot of these players.
Yeah. And continuing on the topic of Federer, he said before the tournament began that his goal was to get to the second week of the tournament, the business end of the tournament, as I like to call it. And that was evident because in his three matches in the first week, his percentage of net points were 14, 13, and 15 respectively. And then come second week, first match, it goes up by 10% to 25%, which are
25%. Yeah.
one fourth one fourth of the points, which is like a lot. So you can see that he's got his feel for it. He's on a roll now. He took time to adjust, but then he came through in straight sets Lorenzo against Lorenzo. So yeah, that was interesting, and yeah, that really sums it up.
I think just one more thing I would like to add. When we talk about Lorenzo Sonego, I think he's a player who really thrives on crowd support. And
Yeah,
and again, he played a match against Federer. And if Federer's playing on the court, there's only one player getting supported at the center court. So I think that was a big fact in that match. He's a young player, he's a new player, and I think this was his first fourth round match at Wimbledon. So big ups to him.
yeah,
But I mean, I still was expecting Federer to win that match.
yeah. No, but then you have that, and then of course with his increased net points and his everything going up, first serve percentage, everything increasing. It's really been, like he said, he got into the second week and he's got into a role.
And since we have a huge Djokovic fan here, Aradhya, what do you feel about Djokovic's performance at the first week of Wimbledon?
I think Djokovic is always once he's in his zone, he's in his mode. I don't think there's anything that can stop him. Not because of the magnificent game he has as even though Nick Bolletry called him the perfect tennis player, but because of the absolute mental strength he has, and which he showed in this year's French Open as well. So I think I would love, even though I'm a Djokovic fan, I would still love to see Federer hold another Wimbledon because it's just so special for him. But I think Djokovic will go through. Djokovic wins this year's Wimbledon.
Yeah, and I think,
Archit, your predictions?
well, I do feel pretty much the same. I think Federer can be a potential threat for Djokovic if he manages to reach the finals, because I was reading an article today which mentioned that if Djokovic doesn't reach the final, then there's a great chance for Federer to get his ninth title here. But the way Djokovic's been
Yeah, but
playing, the
then
way he's been dominating, I think it's pretty safe to say that this might be the 21st slam for Djokovic.
yeah, and at 40 years old, his next potential matches are going to be Daniel Medvedev with a big serve, and then potentially Matteo Berrettini, the big serving Italian, which really helps him on grass. And Federer no longer has that. So he has an accurate and tricky serve, but he doesn't have that raw power in it. And Berrettini and Medvedev will look to exploit that. So he has a tough route leading up to the finals. But like our viewers can see, I'm donning the Uniqlo today, and I'm probably the biggest Federer fan you'll ever come across. So while my heart says Federer, I think I'll agree with you guys that Djokovic is
And
probably
I
going to
think
get
I
his
think
20th.
before we end this episode, I would also like to know what are your predictions for the women's singles. I personally feel that it's going to be Ashley Barty's title this year. She's been playing very aggressively. She's been having some beautiful ground strokes the past few matches, and Ashley Barty's my prediction for this year's edition of the championships. What do you think?
Aradhya, yours?
I would have loved to go with Kogokov, but she lost last night, so I can't go with that now. But I think I would agree with that. Barty wins this year because the sheer power she has, which is a big factor in the women's category.
I agreed with you guys on the men's side, but I think on the women's side, I'm going to go with experience, and I'm backing Angie Kerber to win it this year, the 33-year-old German. I really think that she's pretty much the wall, and although her game isn't quite the same as it was probably 5-6 years ago, but after the match, I saw that excellent for me match of the tournament against the second out match between Angie Kerber and Sorry Tomo, the youngster Sorry Tomo from Spain. She's really, I think more than a game, she won. With a game, she won my heart, and I think I'm going to back her.
Well, I think then that's it for today's episode, guys. Stay tuned in while we come out with the next episode for the second week of Wimbledon.